People in a small Kazakh village started falling asleep and could not wake up. For days, 140 people over the course of 3 years. They fell asleep while walking down the street. They fell asleep while driving a car. They fell asleep mid-sentence and woke up 3 days later with no memory of what happened. The village of Kalachi sits on the steppe of northern Kazakhstan. It is a remnant of the Soviet Union, a place where history ended and the future never arrived. The first case was recorded in 2010. A man collapsed in the middle of the day for no apparent reason. He slept for 16 hours and woke up confused and disoriented. The local doctor had never seen anything like it. Then it happened again. A woman fell asleep at the dinner table and could not be roused for 2 days. Another man blacked out at the wheel of his tractor and nearly died. The victims described the same sequence of events before losing consciousness. A sudden wave of dizziness, a feeling of being pulled downward, nausea that rolled through the body like a tide. Then nothing, just darkness and the slow return to awareness hours or days later. When they woke, they had no memory of collapsing. The last thing they remembered was standing or sitting or speaking. Then they were in a hospital bed surrounded by family who had been watching them sleep for 3 straight days. The symptoms happened anywhere and at any time. The sickness did not discriminate by age or health or gender. Children fell asleep at school, and their parents carried them home. Grandmothers collapsed in the garden and woke up disoriented in a clinic. Men working in the fields passed out standing up. The village had a population of just over 600 people. By 2013, more than 100 of them had been affected. An entire community was living in fear of falling asleep. The Kazakh government sent teams of scientists to investigate. They tested the air and the water and the soil. They tested blood samples and brain scans and every possible environmental contaminant. They found nothing. They tested for radiation. The Soviet Union had operated uranium mines across northern Kazakhstan for decades. The mines had been abandoned after the collapse of the USSR in 1991. The scientists measured radiation levels in Kalachi and found them within normal limits. The uranium was not the cause. They tested for heavy metals and industrial chemicals and biological pathogens, all negative. The doctors were baffled. The scientists were baffled. The government was baffled. And the people of Kalachi kept falling asleep. Theories multiplied. Some believed the Soviet Union had tested biological weapons on the steppe. Some believed the ghosts of prisoners from a nearby gulag were cursing the village. Some believed the sickness was mass hysteria, a community so traumatized by post-Soviet poverty that their bodies had learned to shut down. But mass hysteria does not show up on brain scans, and the brain scans from Kalachi showed something real. The victims had swelling in the brain. Encephalopathy of unknown origin. Their brains showed damage patterns consistent with toxic exposure, but the toxin could not be identified. The village became famous for all the wrong reasons. Journalists called it Sleep Hollow. The internet called it the village that sleeps. Tourists drove from hundreds of miles away to photograph people passed out on benches. The residents of Kalachi boarded up their windows and waited for an answer that never came. Then in 2015, a team of Kazakh and Russian scientists made a breakthrough. They had been studying the air composition inside the homes of Kalachi, not outside, inside, where people actually slept. The carbon monoxide levels in some homes were 10 times the permissible limit. Carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless. It binds to hemoglobin 200 times more strongly than oxygen. The body asphyxiates from the inside while the victim feels nothing but a growing drowsiness, and then sleep, and then nothing. The carbon monoxide was not coming from a faulty furnace or a gas leak. It was coming from the ground. An abandoned Soviet uranium mine sat less than a mile from the village. The mine had been sealed after the collapse of the USSR, but the seal had failed. Groundwater had flooded the tunnels. When water interacts with uranium-bearing rock, in the absence of oxygens, it produces carbon monoxide. Hundreds of cubic meters of gas were being generated deep underground every day. The gas was not rising through the mine shaft because the shaft was sealed. It was rising through the soil. It was seeping upward through cracks in the bedrock and escaping into the homes of Kalachi. The carbon monoxide was invisible and odorless, and it had been filling the homes of the village for years. The residents were not cursed or irradiated or mentally ill. They were being poisoned by the ghost of a Soviet uranium mine. The explanation was elegant and horrifying and utterly mundane. The same Soviet infrastructure that had once employed the village was now killing it. The uranium that the USSR had extracted to build nuclear weapons and nuclear power plants had left behind a chemical legacy. That legacy was carbon monoxides seeping upward through the soil like a slow, invisible tide. The residents of Kalachi were breathing poison every time they went home. The Kazakh government relocated the entire village. Most residents were moved to a new housing development 60 miles away. The village was renamed and the old Kalachi was largely abandoned. The sleeping sickness stopped when the people stopped sleeping above the mine. Not instantly. The brain damage from years of carbon monoxide exposure did not heal overnight. Some victims continued to experience episodes of sudden sleep for months after relocation, but the epidemic ended. The mystery was solved. The Soviet ghost had been identified. It was not radiation or a curse or a biological weapon. It was carbon monoxide from a flooded uranium mine, the poison that you cannot see and cannot smell and cannot taste. The poison that makes you sleepy and then makes you dead. The poison that rose from the ground every night while the people of Kalachi closed their eyes and drifted into a sleep that lasted for days instead of hours. The uranium mine is still there. The carbon monoxide is still being produced by the same chemical reaction in the same flooded tunnels. The gas is still rising through the soil, but there are no beds above the mine anymore. No children doing homework at kitchen tables above the invisible plume. No grandmothers napping in chairs while the carbon monoxide binds to their hemoglobin. The village sleeps because there is no one left in the village to be awake. The mystery of Kalachi was solved because science asked the right question in the right place. The poison was not in the air outside, or the water, or the food. It was inside the homes. It was inside the lungs of the villagers every time they took a breath. It was beneath their feet in the dark flooded tunnels of a forgotten Soviet mine. It was the past refusing to stay buried.